Billionaire saw the waitress washing dishes at 3 a.m. to save her mother and changes her life forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. In the heart of New York City, as the city slept under the veil of darkness, there was one small, brightly lit restaurant that was anything but quiet. It was 3 in the morning, and the hum of the dishwasher was the only sound filling the otherwise empty space. Christina Matthews stood by the sink, her hands submerged in warm, soapy water, scrubbing away the remnants of a long shift. She had been on her feet for hours, but she wasn't done yet. The restaurant was closing, the last of the patrons had left, but Christina had a lot more to do. She had to make sure the dishes were clean, the floors were swept, and everything was ready for another busy day. It was a routine she knew all too well. But tonight, it felt different. As she worked, she couldn't help but think of her mother, who was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. The medical bills were piling up, and there was no money left. Christina had already done everything she could, but it never seemed enough. It was a painful reality she had learned to live with, but tonight, it was especially hard. She tried to push the thoughts away, focusing instead on the task at hand. The clock ticked on, and she worked in silence, her mind occupied with the endless worries about her mother's health. As she scrubbed another plate, she heard the door to the restaurant open. A figure entered, silhouetted against the streetlights outside. Christina barely looked up, thinking it was just another late-night customer. But then she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching her. She turned her head, and there, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, was a man. He was tall, dressed in a tailored suit, and his eyes were fixed on her. It was Jack Anderson, the billionaire who owned several tech companies and was known for his ruthless business tactics. He wasn't the type of person Christina usually interacted with, but tonight, something about his presence seemed different. He stood there for a moment, watching her work, before finally speaking. "It's pretty late for someone to be doing dishes," he said, his voice low and calm. Christina didn't reply right away. She wasn't sure what to say to a man like him, especially when her mind was so preoccupied with her mother's condition. But as she wiped her hands on her apron, she looked up at him, noticing the faint lines of exhaustion in his face. "I have to finish," she said quietly, trying to hide the fatigue in her voice. "My mother's in the hospital. I'm just trying to make enough money to pay for her treatment." Jack didn't respond immediately. He seemed to take a moment to process her words, his gaze softening as he looked at her. For a moment, it felt like time had slowed down. Christina was used to being invisible in the world of the wealthy, to being just another face behind the counter, another waitress among many. But tonight, it felt as if someone had finally noticed her. Jack took a step closer, his expression unreadable. He had heard stories about people like Christina before, people who worked tirelessly without ever expecting anything in return, but hearing it firsthand, seeing the dedication in her eyes, made something inside him stir. It wasn't just about the money, it wasn't just about the job. It was about her. He had never seen someone so willing to sacrifice so much for another person. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He looked at her, still standing by the sink, her tired face illuminated by the overhead light. "I'll take care of your mother's medical bills," he said, his voice firm and decisive. Christina's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected this, never imagined that someone like him, a billionaire who probably didn't even know her name, would offer to help her. But there it was, the unexpected act of kindness, coming from a complete stranger. She stood frozen for a moment, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "No," she said softly, shaking her head. "I can't accept that." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Why not? You need it, don't you?" Christina swallowed hard, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. "I can't just take money from someone like you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Jack smiled, but there was no mockery in it, only understanding. "Sometimes, people just need help," he said. "And sometimes, it's not about what you can give. It's about what you need to receive." Christina stood frozen, the sounds of the kitchen fading into the background as the weight of Jack's offer sank in. She had never imagined this moment would come. A billionaire, offering to pay for her mother's treatment, just like that. She shook her head, trying to comprehend what had just happened. "I can't accept that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack watched her for a moment, his expression serious yet understanding. "I'm not asking for anything in return," he said calmly. "I just want to help." Christina glanced at the checkered floor, her mind racing. She couldn't remember the last time someone had offered help without expecting something in return. But then again, no one had ever seen her struggle the way Jack had. The way he had seen her work, tired but still determined, every ounce of energy devoted to her mother. Christina wanted to refuse again, but something about the sincerity in Jack's eyes stopped her. She had always prided herself on being independent, but this was different. This wasn't just about pride. This was about saving her mother's life. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "I can't just take your money." Jack took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "You don't have to take it. I'll make sure your mother gets the best care. No strings attached." The words hung in the air, heavy with the gravity of what he was offering. Christina's mind fought against the decision. She didn't want to owe anyone anything, especially not a man who had everything she could ever dream of: money, power, success. But deep down, she knew she had no choice. Her mother's life was on the line. She finally looked up at Jack, her voice cracking slightly. "Thank you, but I can't let you do this without understanding why." Jack smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his usually businesslike demeanor. "I've seen people like you before," he said. "People who work harder than anyone else, yet never ask for help. But sometimes, people need to understand that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness." Christina felt the tension in her chest loosen just a little. "I'm not weak," she said firmly, though her voice still trembled. "I know you're not," Jack replied, his voice steady. "I see strength in you. I just want to make sure your mother gets the treatment she deserves." Christina paused, the quiet hum of the restaurant filling the space between them. She had spent so many years trying to be strong for her mother, to hold everything together, that she had forgotten it was okay to lean on others sometimes. She swallowed hard, the realization hitting her like a wave. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll accept your help." Jack nodded, the weight of the situation settling on both of them. "I'll have my people handle everything," he said, his voice firm. "Your mother will be taken care of." Christina didn't know what to say. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Hope that maybe her mother could get better. She looked at Jack, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack nodded, his expression softening. "It's the least I could do." As Christina turned back to her duties, something in her changed. The weight of the world felt just a little lighter, as if the future wasn't as hopeless as it had seemed just moments before. She continued to wash the dishes, but now, every scrub of the plate felt a little less heavy. The soft hum of the restaurant, the sound of dishes clinking together, was no longer just the soundtrack to her exhaustion. It was the beginning of something new, something she hadn't allowed herself to hope for in a long time. As Jack left the restaurant, he paused at the door and looked back at Christina. She was standing by the sink, but she wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a woman who had a future, who had a chance. And for the first time in a long time, Jack felt a sense of purpose. It wasn't about business or money. It was about doing something real, something that mattered. He left the restaurant with the knowledge that he had made a difference in someone's life. And as for Christina, she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, she believed it could be something good. The next morning, Christina woke up with a sense of relief she hadn't felt in years. The weight of uncertainty had lifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a glimmer of hope. She had gone to bed exhausted the night before, her mind spinning with thoughts of Jack's offer. Now, as she made her way to the hospital to see her mother, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment before unlocking her phone to read it. It was from Jack. "I've arranged everything. Your mother's treatment will start immediately. No need to worry about the cost. Focus on being with her." Christina stared at the message for a moment, disbelief mixing with gratitude. She had always been skeptical of offers like this, especially from someone like Jack. But somehow, this time it felt real. Her mother's medical bills had been a constant worry, a stress that never seemed to end. Now, there was a way forward. A path that would allow her to focus on what mattered most, her mother's health. As she entered the hospital room, her heart swelled with emotion. Her mother looked a little weaker today, her breathing shallow, but there was a new sense of peace in the air. Christina sat by her side, taking her hand in her own. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a chance to change the outcome. She could finally offer her mother a future, not just another day of struggle. Later that day, as Christina sat at the small cafe near the hospital, the sound of a familiar voice caught her attention. "Christina," Jack said, walking toward her. He looked different now, softer somehow. The confident, businesslike demeanor that had always defined him seemed to have melted away. "How is she?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Christina smiled faintly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "She's stable for now," she said. "Thank you, Jack. I don't know how to repay you for this." Jack waved a hand dismissively. "You don't need to repay me. Just take care of her." Christina nodded, her emotions swirling inside her. She hadn't expected anything from Jack, especially not kindness. But here he was, offering it freely, without asking for anything in return. It felt surreal. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, treatments, and small moments of hope. Christina had to adjust to her new reality, a life where she no longer had to fear the financial burdens that had held her back for so long. As her mother's condition began to improve, Christina started to feel a shift within herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living again, and for the first time, she could see a future where she could have more than just a job that barely paid the bills. She could see a career, a life beyond the kitchen, and the endless hours of serving food to people who never noticed her. One evening, as Christina sat at her desk at home, the sound of a knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Jack standing there, holding a small envelope. "I wanted to check on you," he said, his tone casual, but there was a glint of something deeper in his eyes. "I hope things are going well." Christina took the envelope from him, her heart pounding slightly in her chest. She hadn't expected to see him again. "Thank you for everything," she said quietly. Jack smiled, but this time, it wasn't the usual smile of someone used to getting his way. "I have an offer for you," he said. "It's a job opportunity, something where you can use your talents. I think you're capable of much more than you realize." Christina stared at him, surprised by the offer. She had never thought of herself as anything more than a waitress. But in that moment, she realized she had so much more to offer. She had ambition, skills, and a determination to make something of herself. She had already come so far, and this was the next step. "I'm interested," she said, her voice steady with newfound confidence. Jack nodded, his expression softening. "I'll have my assistant contact you with more details. I think you'll be a great fit." As he turned to leave, Christina watched him go, her mind spinning with possibilities. She had always believed that the life she had was the only one she could ever have. But now, everything had changed. She had the chance to build a future, not just for herself, but for her mother too. And for the first time, Christina believed it was possible. Her world was no longer defined by struggle. It was defined by the opportunities she had in front of her. As Jack left, Christina closed the door and turned back to look at her mother, who was resting peacefully in her room. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to face them. The future wasn't something to fear anymore. It was something to embrace. Christina sat in her small apartment, the soft hum of the city outside her window a constant reminder of how much her life had changed. It had been a few weeks since Jack had made his offer, and every day had been a new challenge. The job offer was real, and she had been given a chance to step into a world she had never imagined she could be part of. She had spent the past few days preparing herself for the first meeting, trying to push away the doubts that lingered in the back of her mind. Who was she to think she could do this? She had spent so many years in the restaurant industry, serving food to people who never saw her as anything more than a face behind the counter. But now, she was about to step into a role where she would be seen as more than just a waitress. She would be seen for her abilities, her potential, and the things she had worked so hard to achieve. Her mother's health had improved steadily, and the relief she felt was overwhelming. Her mother, who had been so weak and fragile just a few weeks ago, was now sitting up in bed, eating meals on her own, and talking more than ever. The doctors were amazed at her progress, and Christina couldn't help but feel an immense sense of gratitude toward Jack for making it all possible. She had no idea how he had managed to arrange the best possible care for her mother, but she didn't need to know. All that mattered was that her mother was alive and well, and Christina had the chance to start over. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the clock. It was time. She grabbed her jacket, took one last look around her apartment, and left. The city was alive with the usual hustle and bustle, but as Christina made her way to the address Jack had given her, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change in ways she couldn't even begin to understand. She arrived at the building, a sleek high-rise that towered over the city. The polished marble floors, the security personnel, the glass elevators, it was all so different from the life she had known. As she made her way to the top floor, her nerves kicked in. She had never been in a place like this before. Everything was so pristine, so perfect. It felt like she didn't belong. The elevator doors opened to reveal a spacious, modern office with sweeping views of the city. Jack was waiting for her. He stood by the large window, his posture confident as always, but there was something softer in his demeanor now. When he saw her, he smiled and gestured for her to come in. "Christina, I'm glad you made it," he said, his voice warm. "I'm sure you have a lot of questions." Christina nodded, her hands trembling slightly. She had so many questions. But the biggest one was, why was she here? Why had he chosen her? Jack motioned for her to sit at the sleek glass desk. "I know this is a big change," he said, "but I've seen what you're capable of. I think you have the potential to do great things, and I want to give you that opportunity." Christina sat down, still unsure of what was happening, but she knew one thing. This was her chance to prove herself. She could no longer be the woman who stayed in the background, waiting for things to happen. She had to take control of her future. The meeting went on for hours, with Jack explaining the role, the expectations, and how she could fit into the larger picture of the company. He spoke with such passion and confidence that Christina began to feel a flicker of excitement. He wasn't just offering her a job, he was offering her a future. By the end of the meeting, Christina knew what she had to do. She had to step up, take risks, and embrace the life that had been laid out before her. But that wasn't the only change in her life. Her relationship with Jack had begun to shift as well. At first, she had seen him as just the man who had helped save her mother, the man who had given her a chance. But now, as she looked at him across the table, she saw someone more. She saw a person who had helped her rediscover herself, who had given her the tools to change her life. It wasn't just about the money or the opportunity. It was about the trust he had placed in her. For the first time in years, Christina realized that she wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone with purpose, with a future, and she wasn't going to let anyone, or anything, stand in her way. As the meeting concluded and Jack walked her to the elevator, he turned to her and said, "This is just the beginning, Christina. Don't forget, you have a lot more to give than you realize." Christina nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. This was her moment. She stepped into the elevator, the doors closing behind her as she looked up at the city that now felt full of possibility. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she was ready to face it head-on. Her journey had only just begun, and for the first time, she felt ready to embrace everything that came with it. Christina's first few weeks at the new job were a whirlwind. She had never been in a corporate environment like this before. Everything was polished, efficient, and fast-paced. Her desk, tucked away in the corner of a sleek office floor, was small but neat, a reminder of the life she had left behind. She had gone from washing dishes late into the night to sitting in board meetings, discussing strategies with people who were some of the best in the industry. It was overwhelming, but there was also something exhilarating about it. She was finally getting the chance to prove herself. Jack had been right. She had so much more to offer than she had ever realized. The work was demanding, but it wasn't just the tasks that kept her on her toes. It was the feeling that she was no longer invisible. People looked to her for answers now, respected her opinions, and that was something she had never experienced before. Each day, Christina found herself stepping up more and more, taking on projects that challenged her skills, her intellect, and her confidence. It was hard to believe this was the same woman who had once been trapped in a cycle of exhaustion and financial struggle. But as the days passed, she began to understand that her real transformation wasn't just in her job, it was in how she viewed herself. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. As her work life flourished, so did her personal life. Her mother, who had been recovering steadily from the surgery, was now strong enough to move around the house on her own. Christina found herself spending more time at home, sharing laughter and stories with her mother over dinner, a luxury she hadn't had in years. The bond they shared had always been close, but now, it felt even stronger. One evening, as Christina sat across from her mother, sharing a quiet dinner, her mother looked at her with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Christina," she said softly. "You've come so far." Christina smiled, feeling the weight of those words. She had worked so hard for this moment, and it was more than just a success at work. It was the opportunity to give her mother the life she deserved. It was the chance to build something new for both of them. Meanwhile, Jack had continued to be a part of her life, though in a way Christina hadn't expected. Their interactions had evolved over the weeks, from the formal exchanges of a boss and employee to something more complex, more personal. They had begun to spend more time together outside of work, discussing everything from business strategies to their personal lives. Christina found herself looking forward to these moments, not because of the wealth or influence Jack possessed, but because of the way he made her feel seen. For the first time in her life, she felt like someone was truly seeing her, not just the waitress or the caregiver, but the person she had always wanted to be. One day, as they wrapped up a meeting, Jack looked at Christina with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "You're doing great, Christina," he said, his voice steady but filled with an admiration that she hadn't expected. "You're more than I could have hoped for." Christina felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had always been self-reliant, always believing that her worth was tied to what she could do for others. But now, she was beginning to realize that her worth wasn't just in her actions, it was in who she had become. As the weeks turned into months, Christina's confidence continued to grow. She had earned respect at work, developed close friendships with her colleagues, and, more importantly, she had found a sense of peace within herself. She wasn't the woman who had struggled to make ends meet anymore. She wasn't the woman who had silently wished for a different life. She was the woman who had built a future, who had fought for what she believed in, and who had found a place where she truly belonged. One evening, Jack invited her to dinner at a restaurant they both frequented, a place where the two of them had shared several meals over the past few months. As they sat down at the table, Jack leaned forward, his gaze softening. "Christina, I need to talk to you about something important," he said. Christina's heart skipped a beat. Was this about work? About her performance? She had been giving her best, but the thought of failing him in any way was terrifying. Jack smiled, sensing her nervousness. "It's not about work," he said. "It's about you. I've been thinking a lot about the future, and I think you're ready for something more. Something beyond what we've discussed." Christina's mind raced. What was he talking about? "I've seen how you've grown over the past few months," Jack continued. "I want you to be a part of something bigger. I want to offer you a partnership, not just in the company, but in something that could change the way we do business." Christina stared at him, her mind still trying to process what he had just said. A partnership? With him? She had never imagined such a possibility, but as she looked into Jack's eyes, she realized he was offering her more than just an opportunity. He was offering her a chance to step into the future on her own terms. She smiled, feeling a surge of excitement and possibility. "I'm in," she said quietly. "I'm ready." The future, once a blurry concept filled with fear and uncertainty, now seemed full of endless possibilities. And for the first time, Christina knew that she had the power to shape it. Christina sat in her new office, the view of the city sprawling beneath her like an endless horizon of opportunity. She had come a long way since the days of waiting tables, and now, as she gazed out of the glass walls, she couldn't help but marvel at how far she had come. Jack's offer had been the turning point, but the journey ahead was just beginning. The partnership he had offered her was not just a professional step. It was a promise that she could be part of something bigger, something that could change the way business was done. Christina had never imagined herself in a position like this, and yet here she was. The excitement and the pressure of it all were overwhelming, but she was ready. She had to be. Jack had already begun introducing her to some of the high-level meetings, and her input had been more than just welcomed, it had been sought after. She had ideas, perspectives, and insights that no one else in the room had considered, and Jack was more than impressed. "I knew you had it in you," he had said during their last meeting. You're not just a fast learner, you're a game changer. Those words had stayed with her, giving her the confidence to step up and take charge in ways she never thought possible. But it wasn't just the business world that was shifting for Christina. Her relationship with Jack had changed too. Over the past few weeks, they had spent more time together, discussing work, but also sharing personal stories. Christina had learned that Jack wasn't just the successful businessman she had once thought him to be. He had struggles, insecurities, and a past that he rarely spoke about. And as for her, she was no longer just the waitress who had been saved by a billionaire's kindness. She was someone with her own voice, her own vision. One evening, as they wrapped up a late meeting, Jack looked at her with a seriousness that was unusual for him. Christina, there's something I need to ask you, he said, his tone softer than usual. We've built something great here, but I think there's more we can do together. I've been thinking about the future, and I want to bring you on board for something even bigger. Christina paused, wondering what he meant. Bigger? What do you mean? Jack leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving hers. I'm talking about expanding beyond just this company, starting something that could have a real impact on the world. And I want you to be a part of it. Christina's heart raced. She had always dreamed of doing more, of making a difference. But she hadn't expected it to happen like this. What kind of impact? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack smiled, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. We're talking about sustainable investments, projects that focus on renewable energy, technology that can change lives. I've been toying with the idea of creating a foundation that supports startups with a focus on environmental change, and I want you to help lead it. The words hit her like a wave. She had always been passionate about making the world a better place, but the thought of working on something so monumental, something that could truly leave a legacy, was overwhelming. Jack wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her a chance to change the world. I don't know what to say, Christina admitted, her voice shaky with the weight of the decision. You don't have to say anything yet, Jack replied. Just know that you've got what it takes to lead this. I believe in you. Over the next few weeks, the idea began to take shape. Christina spent her days working with Jack and a small team of experts to map out the vision for the foundation. They were researching, planning, and strategizing how they could help fund startups that were developing clean energy solutions, innovative technologies, and sustainable products. It was a dream come true for Christina, but it was also terrifying. She had never taken on such a big project before, and the stakes were high. There were days when she questioned herself, wondered if she was really cut out for this level of responsibility. But Jack was always there, offering support and guidance. You don't have to do this alone, he reminded her on more than one occasion. I'm with you every step of the way. And slowly, the doubts began to fade. Christina realized that this was what she had been working toward all her life. It wasn't just about escaping her past. It was about creating a future where she could make a difference. As the foundation began to take shape, Christina's confidence grew. She found herself taking more risks, speaking up in meetings, and coming up with ideas that were being implemented in real projects. For the first time, she felt like her voice mattered. It wasn't just about being a part of the team anymore. She was leading it, helping to shape the future of the company and the world. But as the foundation grew, so did the pressure. There were moments when the weight of it all seemed unbearable. Long hours, late-night brainstorming sessions, and the constant challenge of balancing the expectations of the business world with the ideals of the foundation. But every time she felt overwhelmed, she would think back to those late nights in the restaurant, when she had no idea how she was going to make ends meet, and she knew that she couldn't give up now. The world was watching, and she wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. One evening, after a particularly long day, Christina sat down in her office, her mind racing with thoughts of the future. She looked out the window, the lights of the city twinkling below her. She had come so far, but there was still so much more to do. And she was ready. She had everything she needed: drive, ambition, and the support of the people who believed in her. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a leader, an innovator, and she was ready to make her mark on the world. Christina's journey had taken her places she never dreamed possible, but with every step forward, the stakes seemed to grow higher. The foundation was starting to make an impact, and Jack was more confident than ever that they were on the right track. But with success came new challenges. Challenges that tested Christina's resolve, her leadership, and her ability to balance ambition with integrity. As the months passed, Christina found herself working longer hours, pushing herself harder than ever before. The foundation had secured partnerships with several innovative companies in the renewable energy sector, and the potential to change lives was greater than ever. But Christina couldn't shake the feeling that she was starting to lose sight of the reason she'd started this journey in the first place. She had been so focused on the big picture, on growing the foundation, on making a difference, that she had forgotten about the smaller moments that had meant so much to her in the past. She had forgotten to check in with herself, to remember why she had wanted to make a difference in the first place. One evening, as she sat at her desk, the weight of the day's work finally catching up with her, Christina looked at the photo on her desk, a picture of her and her mother, taken just a few months ago when her mother had been well enough to sit outside and enjoy the sunshine. It was a reminder of how far they had both come, how much they had fought for. It also reminded her of how much she had changed. She had started this journey wanting to take care of her mother, to give her a better life. Now, she was leading a foundation that was doing work on a global scale. She was proud of everything she had accomplished, but there were moments when she felt like she had left behind the person she once was. The person who had been content with small, simple joys. The person who had learned to be grateful for every little victory. Christina took a deep breath and picked up the phone. She needed to talk to someone, to reconnect with the person who had helped her get to this point. Jack had been there for her in ways she couldn't describe, but this wasn't something she could just talk about with him. It was something she needed to say to herself. The phone rang twice before Jack picked up. "Christina? Everything okay?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice softer than usual. "I just needed to hear your voice." There was a pause on the other end. "What's going on?" Jack asked. "I don't know, Jack. I feel like I've lost sight of what's important. I've been so focused on the foundation, on making sure everything is moving forward, that I haven't taken a moment to just breathe. I've been so busy being everything to everyone that I've forgotten to take care of myself." Jack's tone shifted, softer and more understanding. "You've been carrying a lot on your shoulders, Christina, but you can't help others if you don't help yourself first. Maybe you need to take a step back, even just for a little while. Recharge." Christina didn't say anything for a long moment, letting his words sink in. She had never been one to ask for help, let alone admit that she needed it. But Jack was right. She had been so focused on achieving greatness that she had neglected her own well-being. "You're right," she finally said. "I think I need a break. Just a few days. To clear my head." "Take all the time you need," Jack replied. "You've earned it." After hanging up, Christina felt a weight lift off her chest. It was hard to admit, but she knew Jack was right. She had spent so much time working toward a better future for others that she had forgotten about herself. It was time to slow down, even if just for a moment. The next morning, Christina called her assistant and asked for the next few days off. She knew that the work wouldn't stop, but for once, it wasn't about the work. It was about her. She needed to find herself again, to reconnect with the things that had made her feel whole before the whirlwind of success had taken over. Christina spent the next few days taking long walks through the city, sitting by the water, and enjoying the quiet moments she had once taken for granted. She talked to her mother more, reminiscing about the past and making plans for the future. She remembered what it felt like to be in control of her life, not because of the foundation or her accomplishments, but because of the small things that brought her peace. When she returned to work, she felt different, refreshed. The weight of the world didn't seem as heavy, and she was ready to take on whatever came next. Jack had been right. Taking a step back hadn't been a sign of weakness. It had been a sign of strength. She had needed to pause and reflect in order to move forward with clarity and purpose. As she walked into the office that morning, Jack was waiting for her. "How are you?" he asked, his expression softening when he saw the change in her. "Better," Christina replied with a smile. "I took some time for myself, and I think it's exactly what I needed." Jack smiled back. "I'm glad to hear that. The world needs you at your best, Christina, and I'm proud of the work we've done together." Christina nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had come so far, and yet, this was only the beginning. She was no longer the waitress struggling to survive. She was a leader, a visionary, and someone who knew that the most important thing was to never lose sight of who you are in the process of becoming who you want to be. Christina's days were no longer filled with just the sound of the coffee machine and the clinking of plates. Her life had transformed into something much more, and as she sat at her desk in the sleek office building that now felt like home, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The pressure was still there, of course, but now it felt different. It felt manageable. She was in control, and that was something she had never experienced before. Her confidence had grown, not just in herself, but in the work she was doing. The foundation was flourishing, and Jack had continued to be a mentor, always offering guidance when needed, but never micromanaging. He trusted her, and that trust was something she valued more than anything. As Christina sat down with her team to discuss the next big project, she realized that her role had shifted once again. She wasn't just a leader, she was a visionary, and people were starting to listen. They had taken the projects she believed in and brought them to life, working tirelessly to make sure they succeeded. It wasn't just about the work anymore, it was about making an impact. And that's exactly what they were doing. The work was fulfilling, and Christina found herself excited every day to get to the office, to brainstorm, to create, and to build. There were moments when it felt overwhelming, of course, moments when she questioned whether she was truly capable of the task ahead. But Jack's words echoed in her mind. You've got what it takes to lead this. It was a simple statement, but it was the push she needed to overcome those moments of doubt. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about creating something that could change the world. As Christina was stepping into this new world of purpose, Jack continued to play a huge role in her life. Their professional relationship had evolved into a strong partnership, and the more they worked together, the more they began to understand one another. Their conversations stretched beyond the boardroom. They started talking about their personal lives, sharing stories and experiences that had shaped them. Jack had shared his own struggles, how he had lost a close family member years ago, and how it had impacted him in ways that had made him the person he was today. Christina shared her own story of struggle, how she had fought to survive, to care for her mother, and to never give up on her dreams. There was a deep connection between them, not just rooted in mutual respect, but in shared experiences of overcoming challenges. One evening, as they sat across from one another at a dinner meeting, Jack looked at Christina with a seriousness she hadn't seen before. Christina, I've been thinking a lot about the future and about the next step for us. His tone was calm, but there was an urgency behind his words. Christina looked up, intrigued. What do you mean? She asked, sensing that something was coming. Jack leaned forward, his hands clasped together. I want to take this further. We've built something good, but I believe we're ready for the next level. He paused for a moment, as if considering his words carefully. I'm not just talking about expanding the foundation. I'm talking about a partnership, Christina. A deeper one. One where you and I work together in a way that's more than just business. The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Christina felt her heart race. She wasn't sure what Jack was implying, but she felt something shift inside of her. What kind of partnership? She asked, her voice steady. Jack met her gaze. I'm talking about building something that lasts. Something we can both be proud of. I don't just want to build a company. I want to build a legacy. And I want you by my side, helping to lead it. The offer was unexpected, but in a way, it made perfect sense. Christina had always admired Jack's vision, his ability to see the bigger picture, but now she realized that he was offering her the chance to be part of that vision in a way that went beyond just a job. He was offering her the chance to create something lasting. I don't know what to say, she said quietly, her mind swirling with possibilities. You don't have to say anything right now, Jack replied. Just think about it. You've proven yourself time and time again, Christina. You've earned the right to be a part of this. For the first time in her life, Christina didn't feel like she had to prove anything to anyone. She had already proven to herself that she was capable of achieving great things. But now, the question wasn't about whether she was capable, it was about whether she was ready to take the next step. As she looked at Jack, she realized that this wasn't just an opportunity for her. It was an opportunity for them both. They could create something that could change lives, something that could impact the world in ways they had only dreamed of. And for the first time, Christina felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. I'm in, she said softly. Let's do it. Jack smiled, a look of satisfaction in his eyes. I knew you'd say that. They spent the rest of the evening discussing the plans for their next steps, mapping out the future in a way that felt both exhilarating and daunting. As they parted ways that night, Christina couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation for what was to come. She had come so far from the woman she had once been, and now, the future seemed limitless. She wasn't just working for a paycheck anymore. She was working to make a difference, to leave a mark on the world. And with Jack by her side, she knew they could accomplish anything. Christina stood at the edge of the conference room, looking out at the panoramic view of the city skyline. The lights twinkled below, and she could see the glow of the evening rush, the streets alive with people hurrying to their destinations. It was a familiar scene, but this time, everything felt different. She had taken the step Jack had offered her, into a partnership, into something bigger than just a company. But now, as she looked down at the world, she was about to make decisions that would impact not just the company, but the world itself. The foundation had become her passion, and the new project they were working on, the sustainable business initiatives, had the potential to change lives. They weren't just looking to grow profits. They were looking to create a legacy of environmental change. And for the first time, Christina could feel her purpose align with her actions. She had spent so many years trying to make ends meet, working late into the night, and barely scraping by. But now, she was building something lasting, something that would benefit generations to come. But with this new level of responsibility came a different kind of pressure. Christina had become more visible in the industry, and people were starting to take notice. Some admired her drive and vision. Others, however, were skeptical. They questioned whether someone with her background, someone who had worked in restaurants just a few years ago, could really be capable of leading such a high-stakes initiative. At first, the criticism stung. Christina had never been one to care much about what others thought, but this felt different. These were powerful figures in the industry, people who could make or break the projects she was working on. Yet, Jack's words kept coming back to her. You've got what it takes to lead this. Slowly, the criticism became something she learned to shrug off. She was no longer the waitress in the back of the restaurant, invisible and ignored. She was a leader now, and that came with challenges. But it also came with strength. As the weeks passed, Christina found herself at the forefront of several pivotal meetings. Her ideas were being heard, her strategies were being implemented, and she was leading a team of professionals who respected her. Jack's faith in her had been more than just a compliment. It had been a challenge to rise above, to prove that she belonged in this world. And she had. One afternoon, Jack called her into his office, and for a brief moment, Christina felt a flutter of nerves. Had something gone wrong with the project? Had she missed something important? When she entered his office, Jack was leaning over some papers, his usual confident demeanor in place. Christina, he said, looking up, I've been thinking about the next step for the foundation. We've made progress, but there's still so much to do. I want you to take charge of the next phase. The world's watching us. The weight of his words hit her immediately. The next phase? This was it. This was the moment she had been working toward. The chance to take everything they had been building and launch it on a global scale. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness rush through her. This was no longer just about the foundation. It was about revolutionizing an industry. What exactly are you asking? She asked, her voice steady, but her mind racing. Jack smiled. I want you to be the face of our next campaign, to lead the charge on the global stage. We're looking to make partnerships with countries, companies, and innovators that will help us push the envelope on clean energy and sustainability. You've got the vision, the drive, and the leadership. It's time to take the foundation to the next level. Christina felt a surge of pride as she listened to Jack's words. This was what she had worked for. This was her time. I'm ready, she said without hesitation. Jack nodded. I know you are. The next few months were a blur of preparation, meetings, and intense work. Christina found herself traveling to international conferences, speaking on panels, and meeting with government officials and business leaders. The foundation was gaining recognition in ways she had never imagined. They were building bridges between corporations and governments, all focused on creating sustainable solutions that would have a lasting impact. But it wasn't all easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when the weight of responsibility felt too heavy. Christina would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was truly ready for this level of influence. But every time the doubt crept in, she remembered where she had come from. The sleepless nights in the restaurant, the endless hours spent caring for her mother, the fight to survive. She remembered how far she had come and how much she had already accomplished. And with that, the doubt would fade. She was ready. The campaign they had been working on was about to launch. It would be the largest initiative the foundation had ever undertaken, and it had the potential to change the world. As the launch date approached, Christina felt a quiet confidence settle in her. She had built this. She had led this. And now, she was ready to see it succeed. Jack had been right. She had everything it took to make this work. It wasn't just about the foundation anymore. It was about shaping the future, creating something that would outlast them both. The future was here, and Christina was leading the way. The campaign launch day arrived with all the anticipation and energy Christina had expected. It was the culmination of months of hard work, planning, and sacrifice. The world was watching, and this project, this initiative, was going to set the tone for what the foundation stood for: sustainability, innovation, and a vision for a better future. Christina sat at the head of the long table in the conference room, the screens displaying various live feeds from around the world as partners and industry leaders prepared for the global broadcast. This wasn't just another project for her. It was a turning point, a moment where everything she had worked for could either fail or succeed. She glanced at Jack, who was sitting beside her, his usual calm demeanor a grounding force as they prepared for the presentation. She could feel the nerves in her stomach, but there was also an overwhelming sense of pride. She had built this from the ground up, and no matter what happened next, this moment was hers. The countdown to the broadcast began, and Christina took a deep breath. "Are you ready?" Jack asked, his voice steady. She nodded, trying to hide the slight tremor in her hands. "I'm ready," she said, her voice more confident than she felt. The screen in front of her flickered, signaling the start of the broadcast. All eyes were now on the campaign, and Christina felt her heart race as the opening video played. It was a powerful, cinematic portrayal of the foundation's work, stories of innovation, change, and impact, all focused on the future of renewable energy. The video highlighted the partnerships they had secured, the technologies they had helped develop, and the lives they had begun to change. As the video ended, Christina stood up, the room falling into a hushed silence. This was her moment to speak, to inspire not just her team but the entire world watching. She cleared her throat and began. "Today marks a pivotal moment in our journey. We are not just launching a campaign. We are launching a movement toward a sustainable future, one that we can all be proud of. But this movement isn't just about clean energy or the environment. It's about people. It's about creating opportunities for those who have been left behind. It's about making sure that the future we build is one that works for everyone." Her words were powerful, but what followed was even more impactful. As Christina spoke, she noticed something shifting in the room. The people who had once doubted her, who had questioned whether someone like her could lead such a massive undertaking, were now listening with respect. She wasn't just the face of the foundation. She was a leader who had the vision to back up her words. The presentation continued, with Christina introducing various key partners and experts who had been instrumental in the success of the foundation. Each speaker added their own insights into the progress they had made, but it was clear that the foundation had become more than just a business. It was a movement that was already changing the conversation about sustainable energy. The media coverage was overwhelming, and the response from viewers around the globe was immediate. Christina was bombarded with messages of support, and the campaign began trending worldwide. It wasn't just about what they had accomplished. It was about the impact they were poised to make in the years to come. As the broadcast wrapped up, Christina sat back down, feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. Jack turned to her, a proud smile on his face. "You did it," he said simply. She smiled back, but there was more to it than that. "We did it," she corrected him. "This is just the beginning." As the evening progressed, Christina found herself reflecting on how far she had come. There was a time when she thought success was out of reach, that she would always be stuck in the cycle of struggling to survive. But now, she had the power to change the world, and with the foundation's success, that power was only growing. But even as the world recognized her success, Christina knew that her true work was just beginning. There were still so many people to reach, so many problems to solve, and so many lives to impact. She had always wanted to make a difference, but now she was starting to understand that the real difference was not just in the projects they launched. It was in the people they helped along the way. The foundation had already changed the lives of so many, but Christina wasn't content to stop there. The next phase, the next project, would be even bigger, and she would be at the helm, leading the charge to a better, brighter future. Jack was right when he said that she had what it took to lead. But now, Christina was beginning to realize something else. It wasn't just about her. It was about the team, the vision, and the people they were all working for. Together, they were building something that could truly change the world. And this was only the beginning. Christina sat in her office, the weight of the past few months settling on her shoulders. The success of the campaign had been overwhelming, but it was only the beginning. The foundation had gained global recognition, and now the real work was starting. She could feel the pressure building as the eyes of the world turned toward her. Jack had been right. This was just the beginning. There was still so much to do, so much to change. Christina knew that she couldn't afford to slow down. As the days passed, she found herself working longer hours, constantly planning and strategizing, trying to stay ahead of the curve. The pressure was immense, but it was a pressure she had grown used to. It was the price of progress. Yet, even with all the success and recognition, something felt off. Christina realized that she had been so focused on the foundation's growth, on the external accolades, that she had neglected something deeper, her own well-being. She hadn't taken a moment for herself in months, hadn't even thought about slowing down. Her mother had come a long way, and they had both worked so hard to get to this point. But Christina knew she needed balance. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Christina found herself sitting in her apartment, staring out the window at the city below. She had come so far, but it wasn't just the external accomplishments that mattered. It was about the people around her, the relationships she had forged, and the connections that had grounded her through all the highs and lows. She thought about Jack, about their partnership and how it had evolved over time. He had always been there for her, guiding her when she needed it, pushing her to be better. But there was something more. She had begun to realize that her feelings for Jack had deepened, that their bond was more than just professional. She had never expected to develop feelings for him. After all, they had started as business partners. But as they spent more time together, sharing their hopes, dreams, and personal struggles, something had shifted. She had started seeing him in a new light, not just as a mentor or a business partner, but as someone she could truly connect with. It was a realization that scared her, though. She had worked so hard to build her career, to establish herself, and she didn't want to risk that for a relationship that might complicate everything. But the more she thought about it, the more she knew that she couldn't ignore it. The feelings were real, and she needed to acknowledge them. The next day, Jack called her into his office. He had a new project lined up, and as always, he was eager to get her thoughts. As they sat down to discuss the details, Christina couldn't help but feel the weight of the conversation ahead. She had to talk to him, had to be honest about her feelings. "Jack," she said, her voice a little hesitant. "There's something I need to say." Jack looked at her, sensing the shift in her tone. "What is it?" he asked, his usual calm demeanor softening. Christina took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about how much we've built together, but also about how much I've come to rely on you, not just professionally, but personally." Jack's expression changed, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. He had known there was something between them, something unspoken, but hearing it out loud felt different. "Christina," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "I feel the same way." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to respond so openly, so honestly. "But we've built something incredible together," he continued. "I don't want to risk that, and I don't want you to feel like you have to choose between your career and me." Christina looked at him, her mind racing. "I don't want to risk it either," she said quietly. "But I also don't want to keep pretending that this isn't something I feel." There was a long silence between them as they both processed what had been said. Christina wasn't sure what the next steps would be, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she could breathe. She had been so focused on proving herself to everyone, on building something bigger than herself, that she had neglected to take a step back and listen to her own heart. Now, she knew that she had to trust it. "We'll figure it out," Jack said, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "We've faced challenges before, and we'll face them again. But we're in this together." Christina smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. They had built something strong, something that wasn't just based on business or success, but on trust, understanding, and now, something more. As they left his office that day, Christina knew that the future was still uncertain, but she wasn't afraid of it. She had come so far, and now she was ready to embrace the next chapter, both in her career and in her personal life. With Jack by her side, she felt like anything was possible. Together, they could change the world, and now, together, they could navigate whatever came next in their journey. Christina stood by the window of her office, staring out at the skyline as the weight of the past months settled in. Her partnership with Jack had transformed not only the foundation, but also her entire life. She had gone from a waitress to the leader of an initiative that was truly making a difference, and yet, she felt an unsettling sense of uncertainty. Her relationship with Jack had evolved into something deeper, but the line between their professional and personal lives was beginning to blur. Despite the success they had achieved together, Christina found herself at a crossroads. She loved the work they were doing and the way they were changing the world, but she also knew that to sustain everything, she needed to balance her personal life with her professional responsibilities. Jack had always been there, supporting her, pushing her to be better, and offering her a chance to build something incredible. But as they had spent more time together, Christina began to question if she was ready for the complexities that a relationship with him could bring. She wasn't just leading a company anymore. She was leading a movement that was bigger than both of them. And while the idea of being with Jack was comforting, it also came with challenges she hadn't anticipated. As much as she valued him, she knew she couldn't afford to lose herself in someone else. She needed to focus on who she was becoming, separate from her role at the foundation and her partnership with Jack. But how? Could she reconcile that with everything they had worked for? Their business was thriving, and their personal connection was undeniable. The internal conflict was tearing her apart. One evening, as she sat in her office, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jack. "Can we talk? I have something important to discuss." Christina stared at the screen, her heart racing. She knew what was coming. He had always been direct, but this message felt different. This was the moment. Was it about their business? Was it about their relationship? She took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm brewing in her mind, and responded, "I'm on my way." She arrived at his office just as the sun began to set, casting an orange glow across the city. Jack was standing by the window, looking out at the horizon. His expression was unreadable, but there was a tension in his posture that made her uneasy. As she walked in, he turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity she had never seen before. "Christina," he began, his voice steady, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what we're building here. I don't want to lose sight of what we've created, but I also don't want to lose you." Christina felt a pang in her chest. She had known that this conversation was inevitable, but hearing it out loud still made her heart ache. "Jack, I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. I've spent so much time building the foundation, so much time pouring myself into this project, that I've neglected to think about what I really want. What we really want." Jack stepped forward, his gaze softening. "I get it. This is a big responsibility, and it's not just about the work. It's about us, about finding a way to make everything work without losing ourselves. I want to be with you, Christina, but I don't want us to lose sight of who we are individually." Christina's mind raced as she processed his words. She had never imagined that a partnership like this would be so complicated. She had always believed in the idea of balancing both personal and professional life, but this felt different. This was more than just a business partnership. It was a relationship, a bond built on mutual respect, trust, and a shared vision. And yet, the more they spoke, the more she realized that she didn't want to lose the person she had become in the process. "Maybe we both need time," she said softly, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "Time to figure out what we really want. Time to understand if this is something we can do without losing ourselves." Jack nodded, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I don't want to lose you, Christina, but I also don't want you to feel like you're sacrificing who you are for me, for this." The weight of his words hung in the air, and Christina knew he was right. She had worked so hard to build something that mattered, to create a future that wasn't just about surviving, but about thriving. But she also knew that she couldn't do it at the cost of her own happiness, her own sense of self. "We need to find a way to make this work," she said, her voice firm, though her heart was heavy. "We've built something incredible, and I don't want to lose that. But I also don't want to lose myself in the process." Jack reached for her hand, his touch gentle but grounding. "We will figure it out," he said. "One step at a time." Christina smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that there was no easy answer to the questions they were facing. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could take a step back and breathe, knowing that whatever came next, she wouldn't have to face it alone. Together, they would navigate the complexities of both their personal and professional lives, with the understanding that their success didn't have to come at the expense of their happiness. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They were ready to face it together, with open hearts and a shared commitment to building something that would last. Christina stood on the rooftop of the high-rise building, looking out at the vast expanse of the city. The lights below twinkled like a sea of stars, and for a moment, everything felt still. The wind gently ruffled her hair as she took a deep breath, the cool air filling her lungs. She had come so far from the woman she had once been, unsure, struggling, and invisible. Now, she was standing here, at the pinnacle of her success, ready to embrace the future. But there was more to her journey than the achievements and accolades. It was about the people she had met along the way, the lessons she had learned, and the relationships she had built. It was about her mother, who had fought so hard for her, and Jack, who had stood by her side through everything. They had built something incredible together. But now, Christina knew that the next step in her journey wasn't just about business. It was about living a life that reflected who she truly was. As the days passed, Christina took a step back from the whirlwind of meetings and projects. She spent more time with her mother, reflecting on everything they had overcome. Her mother was stronger now, no longer the fragile woman who had once needed constant care. The two of them spent evenings talking, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. For Christina, these moments were a reminder of what truly mattered. She realized that while success was important, it was the relationships and the connections with the people she loved that made life truly fulfilling. The foundation continued to thrive, and Christina's role in its success was undeniable. But now, she was learning to balance her work with her personal life. Jack had been an important part of her journey, and they had come to a mutual understanding. Their partnership had evolved from business to something more. They had both come to realize that their connection was deeper than they had initially understood. As their relationship grew stronger, Christina knew that they had built something that could weather any storm. One evening, as they sat together at the restaurant they had often frequented during the early days of their partnership, Jack looked at Christina with a quiet intensity. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice soft but filled with meaning. "I never thought we'd get here, but I'm glad we did." Christina smiled, her heart full. "Me too," she replied. "We've built something incredible. And I'm not just talking about the foundation. I'm talking about everything we've created together." Jack reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "We've created more than just a business, Christina," he said. "We've created a future where we both get to be who we are and still make a difference." Christina nodded, her eyes locking with his. She had found something she had been searching for her entire life: purpose, love, and a sense of belonging. They had both learned to balance their ambitions with their personal lives, and now, they were ready for whatever came next. The next chapter in their journey was filled with promise, and Christina was ready to take it on with Jack by her side. As the evening wore on, they talked about the future, the projects they would launch, the initiatives they would pursue, and the legacy they wanted to leave behind. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about living a life that was meaningful, about creating a world where people could thrive, not just survive. Christina knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But now, she was prepared. She had built this life with hard work, determination, and the support of the people who believed in her. And she knew that as long as she stayed true to herself, she could face whatever came her way. The future wasn't just something that happened to her. It was something she created, step by step. She had fought for everything she had, and now, it was time to embrace the next chapter. She was no longer the woman who had struggled in the shadows. She was the woman who had stepped into the light, who had built something that could change the world. And with Jack by her side, she knew they could achieve anything. The journey had been long, but it had been worth every step. And as Christina looked out at the city once more, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything she had built, everything she had learned, and the person she had become. This was just the beginning, and Christina was ready to take on whatever came next, with a heart full of hope and a future full of possibility. Discover the power of transformation and resilience in this gripping tale of personal growth and overcoming adversity. Christina's journey from struggling waitress to a leader in a global initiative is a powerful reminder of the strength we all carry within us. This is a story filled with emotion, challenges, and triumphs that show the impact of support, ambition, and the pursuit of purpose. As Christina works to balance her professional success with her personal life, she learns valuable lessons that not only shape her future, but inspire others. These touching stories are a testament to the human spirit, showing how far one can go when given the right opportunities and support. Whether it's the realization of self-worth or the complexities of navigating a professional and personal relationship, Christina's story proves that the path to greatness is not always easy, but it is always worth the journey. Through hard work and determination, Christina embarks on a mission to change the world, and in doing so, finds a sense of peace and fulfillment. As these touching stories unfold, they remind us that success is not only about what we achieve, but also about how we impact those around us. Get ready for an inspiring experience that will leave you reflecting on the power of perseverance and the importance of staying true to yourself. These touching stories will stay with you, inspiring you to never give up and always believe in the power of change.